So thanks to Sunny, we have some new audio from Hayley. Now I know that it wasn't planned to be released, but of course it seemed that Sunny misjudged the turkey guy and shared confidential audio that she probably shouldn't have shared in the first place, and he basically released it anyway. So she was like, okay, well, I'll get Hayley on my channel and we'll do it properly. So I guess thanks for Hayley for sharing this, even if it wasn't her intention for it to be made public. So if you've already listened to the original version, you'll know that Hayley doesn't edit before she speaks. So I've gone through and I've removed certain words that are going to get me demonetised, or that really just don't need to be in this audio. So just to clarify connections, Hayley is Hayden's stepsister. So Hayden is actually Malehya's half-brother, and then you've got all these marriages and divorces and separations and stuff happening. So in terms of relationships, Hayley is technically not anything to Malehya, but she does call herself a stepsister, I believe. But the connection is actually through Hayden. Now I've taken the time to go through and remove all the extra chatter that occurred during the original live stream. So what I will actually do after I finish working on this video is I will put the audio, Hayley's audio, into a single video with the other bits and pieces that we have from Hayley, so that everything from Hayley is all together on one video, and I will upload that onto my case file playlist. So you may or may not have noticed, but with this case, and I did this previously with the Madeline Soto case, I have two separate playlists. One playlist is content that I've created myself, and that's just like, Lily and Jack Sullivan. The other playlist is a case file, so it's Lily and Jack Sullivan case file, and that contains every interview that's been done by different people in this case, all the media, so all the news reports, and of course the dispatch audio. The only thing missing from that playlist is Dingbat. I do have about 3 hours of Dingbat audio on an unlisted video, and what I might do is split that up into smaller chunks and maybe put that into the case file anyway, even though I think by now we know that it's a load of BS. The reason I didn't originally put it up in the case file was because I was concerned that people might actually believe him. So I didn't want to continue the ridiculous story that was being put out there. But I think now that the majority of people know that it is just a whole load of BS, then I might add it to the case file anyway, because there are some interesting comments in there. So with that said, it's probably a good time to get on with this video.
Go ahead and just quickly say what you thought about the article that came out today by Globe and Mail.
I thought the article was really good. It kind of restored some hope that, going into the new year, that we may have the answers that we have desperately been looking for. Now, with that being said, I don't want to get my hopes up that we'll have all the answers right off the hop, but I do hope for the fact of Jack and Lily that we have those, and, so we can grieve and what have you. If they come home, that be that. So
now, first up, it appears to me that Hayley perhaps gets a bit anxious about speaking publicly. I'm not seeing anything here that tells me that she is being deceptive, but the language is a little bit confused, and I think it's a sign of someone who is a little bit anxious about speaking publicly. I also suspect that she may be a bit uncomfortable with the topic in terms of talking about Jack and Lily being deceased. Now, I noticed this first at the vigil at the end of October, and I'm seeing it here again, it seems to me that Hayley does believe that the children are deceased. But I think there's a part of her who is not sure if she's actually allowed to say that. I think later on she mentions about there being some stress between family members, and we know that Malehya is putting the story out that she thinks they're still alive. So it may be that Hayley is a bit uncomfortable with saying her truth, and to her, she believes the children are deceased. And of course, I do wonder if the awkwardness in her speech may partly stem from that also, knowing that she's essentially going against Malehya's narrative by coming out and indicating that the children are deceased. She says that she hopes for the fact of Jack and Lily that we have those, so we can grieve and what have you. So she's quite uncomfortable with talking about grieving for Lily and Jack. And she throws in at the end, if they come home, that be that. She doesn't say, if they come home, that would just be a miracle, that would be fantastic. She just says, that be that. Which, to me, is a response from someone who knows that they're not coming home. So she can't even allow herself to picture the possibility of them coming home. So it's just like, well, if they come home, that be that. I think it is key here that she is saying that she doesn't want to get her hopes up that they'll have all the answers. Because that says to me that there's a lot that Malehya's not telling her. Now, I realise that when Sunny was talking to her in this live stream, that she's already worried about the fact that she's probably burnt her bridges a little bit in terms of handing over private audio to the turkey guy. But I would have liked, just one question I would have liked answered by Hayley, and that is, does she truly believe that Malehya has had nothing to do with the disappearance of her children? Does she truly believe that Malehya knows nothing about the disappearance of her children? And if that is the case, how does she account for the far too similar stories from Daniel and Malehya about the Friday morning? Particularly given the fact that it seems almost certain that those children were not alive Friday morning.
One thing that always stood out was how much you were just wanting answers for Jack and Lily. And can I just ask you, so for the audience themselves, how has it been for you from the time that the disappearance happened up until this point, about your, I don't know, just anything that you feel like you've been personally going through because of this case?
It's extremely hard. It's something that I would not want anybody to have to go through. It's something that, you hear about things happening, but not so close to home, not you, not your family. It's been a hard 8 months. Like, we're 2 weeks away from the 8-month mark, and there's nothing that eases the pain of wondering what happened. It's been really hard mentally, physically, trying to pull yourself up out of bed to get your days going, and but we have to do that, and we're doing it for Jack and Lily.
I don't see any red flags here. I don't see any attempts by Hayley to hide any sort of knowledge. She's saying that it's been extremely hard. She talks about how, it's so close to home, that it's been a really hard 8 months. And this all sounds like someone who is genuinely unsure of what happened to these children, and who is genuinely who genuinely cares and is genuinely feeling some pain. She said the pain of wondering what happened. I just find it ironic that she hadn't seen these children for 2 years, and yet the way she's talking about their absence is what Daniel should have been doing. She's using all the right words. She's using the right terminology. I do believe that she does wonder what happened to them. Now, I don't know if she, like I said, I don't know if she realises Malehya's involvement in this, or whether she believes Malehya is innocent in all this. But I don't think Malehya has confided in her in terms of what truly happened to the children. I think she's in the dark in terms of that. I think Malehya's lying to many members of her family. But, you know, she's talking here about how hard it is mentally and, you know, to physically pull yourself up out of bed to get your days going. That is someone who is definitely struggling with what is happening within her family. It is interesting, though, that she says that, you know, she does it, or you have to do that, we're doing it for Jack and Lily. This is a woman who has children of her own. So I would expect to hear that she's doing it for the sake of her own children, because she can't fall apart for her children. Her children need her. So I'm not sure if this is just a case of she knows that this discussion is relating to Jack and Lily, so she wants to bring it back to them, and she's not talking about her own family stuff. Maybe that she doesn't want to discuss her own children publicly, and I wouldn't blame her. Now, she comes across as being a little bit naive, but I'm not sure if that's a case of actually she sees quite clearly what the situation is here, but she doesn't want to publicly voice any criticism of Malehya, or whether it is that she genuinely believes Malehya. Now, I don't know how old Hayley is exactly, but it's her early to mid-20s. So she's younger than Malehya. I don't know how long she's known Malehya, but I would imagine that quite possibly she's known Malehya for at least since she was a teenager. So there probably is this clash between loyalty to someone who to you is family, even if you're not blood related, and then the realisation that that person has potentially done something not good, and the struggle with coming to terms with that. And in trying to come to terms with that, also trying to figure out how you're meant to react, how you're meant to talk to people about that situation. I mean, when you listen to Hayley, the way she speaks about Malehya gives the impression that Malehya is painting herself as a bit of a victim, knows nothing, had no involvement, and wants the family to support her. But I think also when I listen to some of the comments that Hayley makes, I do think that she sees through all that. But I think there is like that family loyalty, so you don't want to speak publicly about a family member, even though you're suddenly discovering that they're probably not the person that you thought they were. Although I have to say, one thing that her and Kiki both seem to have in common when they talk about Malehya is they describe her in terms of someone who is somewhat narcissistic, someone who is extremely self-centered, and who perhaps lacks the maturity to do the right thing by her own children.
You actually physically have Hayley here to discuss those clips that are.
And I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory as well. You have asked me some questions, I answered back to them. Now, with that being said, like I answered them with, confidentiality, like that they weren't going nowhere, which you explained, yada, yada, we're over it. It is fine. There is nothing in this case that is being said that isn't going to be out there. like hell or high water here, everything's going to be out. It is what it is. I will say from the beginning, when DT did play that little clip, which was me talking about, you know, Hayden drinking, getting drunk, Malehya having a few drinks, I didn't agree with it. But hey, that's not for me to really agree or disagree with. It is her life. She is going through a lot. He did end up removing that once I reached out to him, but he wanted to have a conversation with me and I wouldn't conversate with him. So this has got me feeling kind of like, okay, she won't talk to me. She's not giving me any ins from her. So let's just go, you know, do her dirty in a way. Oh, just the end there. I said that I said what I said, and I said it with my whole chest, and everything that I said has come from either something I was told from Malehya, something I have heard, something I have gathered myself. Like, it's no crazy secret. I knew it'd be out there, but I didn't think somebody would, you know, want to throw shade at me that way, which is fine. We're here now. We're going to go through them. It is what it is.
Okay, first of all, I love the word conversate. It's not a word that is used here in Australia. We might say converse, but in Australia it wouldn't be recognised as correct English to say conversate. But it's just got this nice ring to it. Anyway, just saying that. Now, I missed this before. After me saying that, you know, I wondered where she stood in terms of Malehya, she actually said here, when the audio was glitching all over the place, she said, she won't talk to me. There was more to it, but it glitched out. So she is kind of PO'd with Malehya. I think she realises that there is a lot more to this than Malehya is saying, and she is frustrated because Malehya won't talk to her. So that answers a lot of my questions. She is understandably PO'd about her private audio being made public. But I just want to point something out here, because both her and Sunny are all over the turkey guy for releasing this private audio. And yes, he did the wrong thing. It is a low-down, dirty act to do that. But Sunny's deflecting from herself. She is the one who had a private conversation with Hayley. Now, here's the thing. The information that she was given, yes, it is interesting. Yes, it reflects on Malehya's state of mind, etc. But it was given in confidence. So to say, well, I'm sharing it to give receipts for this information, you shouldn't be passing the information on in the first place. You sit on that information, and if you want to put it out, then you need to discuss it with the person you got the information from. Essentially, if you have information, but the receipts you have for those information are something that is not meant to be put out there publicly, then you shouldn't be putting the information out. And you certainly shouldn't be sharing it with other content creators, hoping that they're going to do the right thing by you and not jump on this exclusive audio and share it. Now, Hayley is essentially saying here that she thinks she may have been a bit hard on Malehya over Malehya and Hayden drinking, and you'll hear that incident in just a moment. And she's saying it's not for her to agree or disagree with it. Well, straight up, I'm going to give validation to what Hayley is feeling, because I'm sure many people feel exactly the same way. Her children have gone missing, and she's partying, she's going to the beach, she's acting like she's single and free, not fettered by having to worry about children, and you can see why it would grate on people. Particularly given that it seems almost certain that at the very least she knows what happened to her children. And she failed to protect them. Regardless of what actually occurred on May the 1st, May the 2nd, those children went through several years of torture with her partner because she was too much of a narcissist to put her children before herself. And I think the main thing that makes it deplorable that Malehya was busy having a binge with Hayden is the fact that she would have been doing it to forget what happened to her children. I'm sorry, but if you're not prepared to stand up and speak out for your children and say what actually happened, then you deserve to suffer. You shouldn't be hiding behind the bottle. Yes, what Malehya went through was clearly traumatic, but she's not dealing with it in the right way. So Hayley is well within her rights to be pissed with Malehya. If she truly didn't know what happened to her children, then she should be pulling it together and speaking out, going searching, doing everything in her power to find where her children are and to find what happened to them. But I think it's telling when Hayley says that she's going to do her dirty, essentially, because she won't talk to her, because that shows us that there is that conflict there for her. On one hand, the sense that she needs to be loyal because Malehya is kind of family, but also the other side of it in that she can see things are wrong here and Malehya's not doing the right thing and she's angry about it. So while I can understand her sense of loyalty, I can understand her being torn between wanting to speak out about what Malehya's actions have been since the children went missing, and then also wanting to protect her family. I don't see it so much as her doing Malehya a dirty in her terms, but rather her speaking out for Jack and Lily. She is saying this is not the appropriate behaviour for a mother whose children are missing. That's not doing a dirty. That is just stating a fact. And that is showing people exactly what is wrong with this situation. And it certainly seems that Malehya doesn't care about how her actions impact on the people around her. Because I would imagine when you're an aunt and your niece and nephew are missing and you see their mother acting like that, that would hurt. But it certainly seems like Malehya thinks of only Malehya.
These clips were from like August 14th and 16th. I'll play this first, I guess.
Spoke to Malehya regarding that car. She knew nothing about it. She even went to the major crimes fella that's working with her and asked, like, why the hell didn't I know about this, that you guys were following up on this tip? They didn't even let her know that. But she's saying that she had no knowledge of this car thing happening during that night.
I'd really like to know if Hayley does believe these things that Malehya is telling her. Because honestly, I believe Brad and Justin. Their stories line up. They're not identical stories. They haven't concocted stories together, but their stories basically back each other up. Now, if it was something that had been concocted, then you would expect to hear, like what we hear from Daniel and Malehya, where even if the words don't 100% match up, every element of the narrative is the same. But we don't get that from Brad and Justin. Their stories differ, but they match. So I believe them. So Malehya telling Hayley that, she had no idea about it, I call BS on that. It seems like there's been a little bit of pushback recently from Malehya's family, trying to give this idea that Malehya didn't know anything. Malehya didn't know what Daniel did to the kids. She didn't know where he took them or anything. Now, I actually believe that she wouldn't know where he took them. He's such a control freak. I don't believe he would have told her. But they concocted their narrative together. They came up with their lies together. So, of course, she knows what happened to her children. She helped with the cover-up. So she's lying to Hayley here, because she would have to have been aware of this vehicle going back and forth. She would have to be aware of the reason for that vehicle going back and forth. But note how Hayley's not defending her here, but she's also not offering any judgment. She's just saying, this is what Malehya told me. End of story. Not, this is my opinion of it, or I'm going to stand up for Malehya now, but simply, this is what she told me. Now, she made that comment, Malehya doesn't tell me anything, but she's told her this. I would like to know if she does believe Malehya is lying to her, and if that's more what the context of Malehya doesn't tell me anything is, in terms of she knows that the stuff that Malehya is saying is BS. It seems like a bit of a wasted opportunity to have Hayley up on her channel to discuss this audio, but not to ask any real questions about it. Now we know that Hayley, by her own admission, can get fired up. She was talking about her being on Daniel's tail the whole time when she was there, when they were searching for the children. But it also seems like she maybe doesn't like to make waves. Or is she just naive? Or is she just not saying these things because she's not been asked by the host? Because if she is feeling that sense of family loyalty, even though she's got questions of her own, even though she doesn't believe Malehya, then chances are, unless she is asked about it, she's not going to offer up that information.
Let me just...
She was... Okay, so yesterday when Cindy called me, I could tell that she was really upset. And I kind of asked what was going on. So Saturday night, Hayden wanted to go over to her house. She wasn't home. She was working at the hospital. She's an LPN. Anyways, so Cindy said, yeah, go over home, go feed the horses, let the dogs out, whatever. So Malehya and Hayden headed over, which is fine. They both stayed the night there. Cindy got back in the morning. Malehya was gone. Hayden was passed out on the couch. There was 2 full bottles of vodka gone, liquor strewn across the house, things in a disarray from Hayden and Malehya. Like, disrespectful. Like, Cindy lost her absolute mind. And no, Malehya is not one bit upset. She's walking around, prancing around like her shit don't stink. She's done up to the nines daily, makeup, full outfits. Like, as a mother myself, if my children were missing, somebody would physically have to drag me out of my bed. I would have lost my apartment by now because I wouldn't be working. I wouldn't have an income. Like, I wouldn't know what to do. The only thing that's saving Malehya for money, well, is her grandmother, of course, but also the India Brook band gave her thousands of dollars in gas cards, grocery cards, and everything. And she's literally just walking all over them. She doesn't even stay out there in the place that she has. She's either at Cheryl's or in town at Patty's.
Now, I can see why Daniel feels threatened by Hayley, because she just tells it as it is. She's brilliant. She's completely upfront. There's nothing being put on here. She's just telling it as she sees it. We finally found someone other than Belinda who's not trying to sell us something. And what she's saying definitely aligns with what Wade and Kiki have been saying as well, that Malehya is basically a grifter. Now, I haven't had time to ask Belinda how old Malehya was when she got together with Cody, but I'm willing to bet that Malehya lived at home, or at least lived with Paddy, up until the point in time when she got together with Cody. Cody supported her, then her and Lily, and then up until when they split up, her, Lily and Jack. It was probably a good thing for him that they split up, because then he wasn't having to support her at least. The thing that comes to mind when I listen to Hayley is that Malehya is an entitled brat. I find it ironic that Hayley is saying, look, you know, she doesn't see Malehya as being upset. Hayley's upset with her because Hayley has clearly got a good sense of morals, a good sense of what is right. I mean, heck, Hayley actually goes out and works and earns money to support her children and to support her family. Something that Malehya clearly has never done. But Hayley made this great point. She said, if it was my children, you'd have to drag me out of bed and I wouldn't have anywhere to live because I would have lost my job. So essentially, rather than doing anything in terms of finding her children or going and speaking to the RCMP and telling them exactly what happened, sounds like Malehya is just acting out. And that's what it is. She's acting out to tell the world that she feels hurt. This is all about Malehya. Just for a bit of a compare and contrast, one or two of you may remember a case from 2021, 4 years ago. 4.5 years ago, because it was the middle of 2021. And this was the Daniel Robinson case. He was a geologist, and his job was basically something to do with the wells in the desert. So he went to check on them, maintain them, etc. He went missing. It's 4.5 years ago. His father still organises search parties. His father has been so vocal about trying to find his son. He didn't fall apart because he realised that it was up to him to be the one to do what he could for his son, because he was butting heads with authorities and they didn't seem to be making much progress. About a month after Daniel went missing, so August 2021, we had Gabby Petito go missing. What did her family do? Her stepfather travelled alone thousands of kilometres across America to the last known location. Her mother, her stepmother, her father, all got on social media and kicked up a storm. Her father went around to the laundry's house to ask them where his daughter was. They were on the phone non-stop to the laundries, trying to get them to answer the phone to tell them where Gabby was. They didn't go out partying. They didn't dress up to the nines and just go, oh, well, Gabby's missing, whatever. When you become a parent, that becomes your permanent job. If your children go missing, you're still their parent. It's still your job to be the one to speak out, the one to do what you can to try and get help to get them found. You don't go having a binge and making yourself look all pretty, dressed up to the nines. Now, I mentioned a case yesterday which is going to trial in January, and that's the Dee Warner case. And basically her husband has been arrested over her death. It was a classic situation where Dee was going to leave him. She had organised for a friend to look after her daughter, who was, I think, something like 5 years old at the time, so that she could have that conversation with Dale without her daughter being there for all the angst and anything that may have occurred. Well, that was the last time anyone saw Dee. And then Dale's reporting that she's probably gone off to live on some lovely tropical island with some guy. Now, Dee's family made contact with the Cold Case Foundation, which is where Chris McDonough works or is part of. So he has the YouTube channel The Interview Room, which is a really good channel to watch. But he's also a member of Cold Case Foundation, which is retired law enforcement individuals, lawyers, profilers, you name it, the whole gamut. And they basically look at cold cases, but they also occasionally help out with cases that are stalling, like not entirely cold, but, you know, they need a bit of help with it. I believe they were involved with the Michael Vaughan case in the background. They never say what cases they're involved with in the background, but they get involved with these cases and just do a little bit of extra legwork to help out, to try and help get a resolution. So they got involved, and Billy Little, who is a lawyer, he is a brilliant lawyer, got involved, and he got investigators onto it all. So they knew that it was Dale that was responsible for it. And they put a massive sign, which would be basically on Dale's daily route, like a billboard with a big picture of Dee on it saying, "Help Dale find Dee." So that every day he had to look at her face. We need something like that near Paddy's house, near Cheryl's house, near the entrance to the reserve. Malehya needs to see these kids' faces every single day. So what we're hearing here from Hayley is that Malehya is definitely still grifting. She is still getting supported by Patty. Clearly Patty's just paying whatever Malehya needs paid for. And she's taking advantage of the Indian book band. She only went there to hide out from Daniel. Let's be honest. That's the only reason she's there. And then comes the perks of a free house, free fuel, free groceries. It sounds like Malehya has never ever had to fend for herself her entire life. She just grifts off everybody else. Now, in terms of her not staying at the place that they've given her there, I guess on one hand I understand, because I don't think Malehya has ever lived alone. I'm guessing she lived with Patty, then moved in with Cody, moved back in with Patty, moved in with Daniel, moved back to Cindy and Wade's place, ended up on the reserve, probably was like, I don't know how to function on my own. Which is why she's spending her time between Patty's and Cheryl's. Maybe Patty eventually puts her foot down and says, get out, so Malehya heads off to Cheryl's. Or maybe she heads off to Cheryl's when she wants to have a nice big binge. But certainly the picture that Hayley is painting here is of an immature grifter who really doesn't seem to be concerned over the fact that her children are missing. Now, we know that clearly this is affecting her because she's acting out. You don't go through 2 bottles of vodka with someone unless you are acting out. Unless you're an alcoholic. Now, it's always possible that maybe that is something that we just haven't heard about, given that Hayley is suggesting that Patty also has issues with alcohol. It is also possible that having cut contact with Daniel, Malehya no longer is able to get other stuff, so has to settle for alcohol and needs a huge quantity of alcohol to try and achieve the same as what she would achieve with things given to her by Daniel, if you know what I'm talking about. But I think the big issue here is, on one hand, Malehya is telling family members she knows nothing about what happened to Jack and Lily. She's as clueless as everybody else. And yet her behaviour is telling us she's written them off. Her behaviour is telling us she doesn't see the need to search for them. She doesn't see the need to plea for their safe return.
And Malehya can't even speak without Cheryl butting in or something, even to family. And like, I know Cheryl because her sister dates my brother and has kids with him. But it's a little ridiculous. I was with them, I don't know, a few weeks ago. We were putting out flyers for Jack and Lily, and Malehya's phone would go off, and Cheryl would put her password in and check her phone before she got to check it. Now, tell me that's not fucking control, and why, I don't know, because Cheryl and Malehya were never really friends before. Malehya was more friends with Shelby, which is Cheryl's sister that dates my brother and has kids with.
So this is a bit of information that we hadn't heard before, that she's saying, like, Malehya can't even speak without Cheryl butting in, even to family. And she's saying, she gives us the connection there, so Shelby dates Hayley's brother. So there's been a lot of confusion over where does Cheryl fit in. And I think a lot of people thought Shelby was Hayden's girlfriend, but she's saying her brother. So not Hayden, her actual brother, not her stepbrother. So that's where Shelby fits in. Shelby dates Hayley's brother. I think we need like a family tree for these guys because it's just so confusing. You have Malehya and Hayden, who are Cindy's children from different fathers. Then you have Kiki, who's a stepsister from Wade's side. Then Hayden has a stepsister, Hayley, who has a full brother, we don't know his name, who's dating Shelby, whose sister Cheryl has now become Malehya's best friend. Honestly, you could turn this into like a Days of Our Lives series. Now, first of all, let's talk about the Cheryl and Malehya were never really friends before. Now, Hayley can only base this on when she was actually in contact with Malehya 2 years before the children went missing. So, as far as she knew, Shelby and Malehya were good friends, not Cheryl and Malehya. But the thing is, when you have a coercive relationship like what Malehya and Daniel were in, then usually they're allowed a few friends. And those friends are people who are new friends, people who aren't going to seem to be too much of a threat to the relationship. We know that Hayden had an in because he had to drive Patty. And then indirectly you have the connection with Shelby and Cheryl and Hayden. I'm guessing that maybe Shelby is closer in age to Hayden. Maybe that's how they're all connected, because we know that they were with Hayden and Emily when they were searching. So it is possible that without actually meeting her, Daniel just considered, well, Cheryl is a new friend, she's no threat because she doesn't have connections with all Malehya's other family and friends, without really knowing the full story. Because you can bet in those sort of relationships that when a new friend is introduced, their connections are not told to the partner, because otherwise the friendship would be squashed immediately. It's also possible that Malehya and Cheryl connected when Cheryl and everyone turned up to search for the children. Because there's a reason why we're seeing this connection between Cheryl and Malehya. Maybe they did only become besties after the children went missing. Because what you're seeing here is Malehya has basically substituted a codependent relationship with Daniel for one with Cheryl. She's not someone who can function on her own. She needs someone to do the heavy lifting for her. That's what this is all about. She is basically allowing Cheryl to make all her decisions for her, to do all her speaking for her. Malehya has learned that in life, if you act incompetent, then people will do it for you. So Cheryl is basically essentially being used by Malehya. Cheryl is offering exactly what Malehya wants, someone who can basically do the adulting for her. Cheryl is clearly someone who likes to do that sort of thing, and so this is also serving her needs. Because just from the little bit we've heard from Cheryl, I would say that she has the sort of personality that it certainly serves her needs to have someone like Malehya who is so very much reliant on her. Someone like Malehya who is incapable of acting like an adult and needs Cheryl to take control. Cheryl is a fixer, so she needs to be able to fix things. So Malehya is perfect for her. So it is definitely a codependent relationship. And based on this, based on what Hayley is telling us, that explains why Malehya made those complaints to the RCMP about Belinda. That wouldn't have been Malehya's idea. That would have been Cheryl saying, hey, look, these people are talking about you. And so the thing is, Cheryl doesn't have any loyalty to Malehya's family, other than, of course, to probably Shelby, who I guess is technically not really family anyway. But Cheryl is perfect for Malehya because Cheryl will stand up to Malehya's family on her behalf without feeling any guilt over loyalty to that family. So it is definitely a codependent relationship where Malehya's basically found someone to take over the adulting role for her. And this would very much explain why Hayley is kept out of the loop. Because Hayley's not going to take that sort of crap from Malehya. Listening to Hayley, we know she would basically give her a boot up the arse and say, get yourself out there, start doing something for your children. Now, I find it interesting that back in August they were putting out flyers, because I can guarantee that wasn't Malehya's idea. I suspect that maybe she hadn't told Cheryl at that point in time what had happened to her children. I believe that Cheryl does know. I suspect that Malehya probably has told her. Just based on Cheryl's body language at the vigil, I may be wrong, but I think Malehya's probably told her a heck of a lot that she's told nobody else. But in terms of the putting out flyers, I would imagine that was probably Cheryl's idea. And because Malehya has basically handed over the reins and allowed Cheryl to basically be in control, call the shots, then Malehya wouldn't have said no to going out and putting out flyers. Because for her relationship with Cheryl to continue, she needs to continue to be compliant. So you can bet that when Cheryl's saying, yeah, you should do this, that Malehya is jumping to it. Because it suits her to have someone to make all those decisions. So it doesn't surprise me that they were putting out flyers in that sense. But in the other sense, we know it would have been an act for Malehya. And with this sort of relationship, it doesn't surprise me that Cheryl was checking Malehya's phone. She was gatekeeping for her. Because Cheryl would have already decided what people Malehya should be having contact with and what people she shouldn't be having contact with. Belinda spoke about the text messages between her and Malehya after the children went missing, and that it didn't sound like Malehya. Well, I'm going to suggest that it didn't sound like Malehya because it was Cheryl responding. And at that point in time, I believe that Cheryl was probably trying to protect Malehya from anyone who would ask hard questions. And we know that Belinda had plenty of questions, even at the very beginning, which I don't blame her.
It's pretty self-explanatory, you know. The emotions were still raw. There was things that I seen that, you know, as a mother myself, didn't align with, you know, how somebody should be acting. But in the long run, when I sit back and I think, like, I shouldn't be judging somebody, or, you know, everybody goes through things different. And if that was her way of trying to, you know, show her emotions, which was getting done up, doing things with people, you know, maybe I shouldn't have said so much. I don't know. But, like, you know, the drinking and stuff at that time was kind of like, why? You would think you'd want to have, like, your full wits about you and you're full in looking for your children. And I didn't feel like at that point she was there. And maybe that was her, you know, ridden by sadness and not knowing what path to follow. But yeah, I mean, it's there. I said what I said, you know.
First of all, I can see why Malehya keeps Hayley out of the loop, because Hayley picks up on a lot. Hayley sees through all the BS, as far as I can tell from listening to what she's saying here. And yes, I think that Hayley, even if it's just deep down, does believe that Malehya, at the very least, knows what happened to her children, and I'll come back to that. So first of all, she's talking about raw emotions, and she's saying, well, she shouldn't have been judging. Everybody goes through things differently. Yes, everybody does go through things differently. But my question to Hayley is this. If your children were missing, would you just completely drop your bundle and let others worry about your missing children? Would you just become a raging party girl, go and whack on the makeup and go out and do all this socialising, etc.? Yes, Hayley's right in saying that everyone goes through things differently and we have to show some sort of understanding for how they cope with things. But the thing is, and Hayley put her finger on it, she nailed it. Malehya's actions were all about Malehya and not about her children who were missing. So Hayley had every right to feel upset by Malehya's behaviours. Now, sure, if the story was different here and hypothetically Lily and Jack had met with some sort of accident where basically someone called 911 and the public knew within 12 hours that these children were deceased as a result of an accident, then yes, you could forgive a mother for going off the rails. You could forgive a mother for drinking a bottle or so of vodka and acting out. As for the putting on makeup and going out, not so certain. But you would turn around and say, well, it's not my place to judge because she's lost her children, they are deceased. Her world has been shattered. But as far as we're all concerned, Malehya doesn't know where her children are. Malehya doesn't know that her children are deceased. And in her own statement, Malehya claims that she believes they're still alive. So based on what we actually know, then Hayley is well within her rights to be annoyed at Malehya, to feel that Malehya was not acting appropriately. Now, she says if that's her way of showing emotions, getting done up, doing things with people, maybe I shouldn't have said so much. Note how she said if that's her way of showing emotions. And the things that she speaks about don't relate to someone showing emotions. That relates to someone basically shutting things out. Getting done up and going out with people. That's not showing emotions. The acting out, getting drunk with Hayden, that is showing emotions. Now we can see that in the early days of her relationship with Daniel, Malehya did like doing herself up, doing her makeup and all that sort of stuff. What we saw after the children went missing was a completely different Malehya. But that fits with the sort of relationship they were in, because you can bet over time that Daniel gradually pushed her to the point of not allowing her to wear makeup and stuff when they went out somewhere, because he did not want other people looking at her. So part of the putting on makeup and stuff would have been rebelling against Daniel. But at the same time, and this may sound a bit cruel, but Malehya seems to define herself in terms of being in a relationship. So I think that at the same time, the putting on makeup and going out with people was her putting herself back on the market while her children were missing. Now, I mentioned in my previous video, I think it was my previous video, that Malehya comes across to me as the sort of mother who fixates on the baby, so the other children get pushed aside. So we heard Belinda saying that she kind of had to spoil Lily a bit when she was around, because Lily was a little bit jealous of the attention that Jack was getting when Jack came along. We've heard Janie say that when Meadow was born, that basically Lily and Jack kind of got pushed to the side and everything was about Malehya. And I believe Janie when she's saying this, because we've already heard Belinda saying exactly the same thing. So I think there is a part of Malehya that can just go, okay, well, the children are gone, time to find myself a new partner. I'll just have another child. Now, obviously, it's not going to be something that she's going to be aware of in those terms. But, like, on a psychological level, on a level that maybe she's not even aware of, this is someone who basically defines herself by having the cute baby on the hip. Well, Lily and Jack are gone. CPS have taken Meadow. So she's going to go out, find herself a new partner, and get pregnant again. I may be wrong, but that's the way I'm reading what Hayley is saying here. But what I find a little bit alarming is that this suggests to me that whatever happened to Lily and Jack was so heinous that Malehya has had to completely block it out. She's acting like nothing ever happened, which to me says she has completely pushed that right down into her subconscious and is trying to carry on like she never even had these children. The getting into the alcohol and stuff, that is her brain reacting because she's not dealing with it in any other way. Which ties in with what Hayley is saying when she's saying about maybe she should, after she says, maybe I shouldn't have said so much, she's talking about the drinking and stuff. And she's like, why? You know, you'd think you'd want to have your full wits about you. You're full in looking for your children. She's having trouble putting it into words there. But what she's trying to say is you would think that you would want to be holding it together for the sake of your missing children, that would be your focus. Now, the next thing that Hayley said shows me exactly where she's at in terms of looking at Malehya's actions in terms of Jack and Lily. Now, I don't know if this is something that she's only realised on a subconscious level, or if this is something that she has processed herself but is not saying publicly. Because she's talking about the drinking and stuff, and she says maybe that was her ridden by sadness and not knowing what path to follow. So with one single word, she's told us that she believes Malehya feels guilty, because she's used the word ridden by sadness. Now, obviously, language evolves over time and people mishear things that should technically be riddled with guilt. Riddled is something that usually is attached to guilt, because it has that meaning of being plagued with something. You might talk about a stray dog being riddled with fleas. You talk about people being riddled with guilt. you tend not to be talking about someone being riddled with sadness. And in fact, had you not heard the audio and I gave you half that sentence and said maybe that was her ridden with or riddled by, you would probably insert guilt. So it definitely seems like on some level Hayley believes that Malehya definitely had a part to play in what happened to Lily and Jack, and that she knows what happened to Lily and Jack.
So I did take a break away from answering you. I ignored you a few times. I was just like so pissed off, and I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, Jack and Lily are innocent in all of this, and somebody knows something out there. So if me roughing some feathers is the way to go about it, then whatever. I think by now everybody knows how I feel and what I truly want out of this case. And you know, if this gives me some backlash, so what? What can't I handle at this point? And
So
like, to keep in mind, these are from August, a very raw time still of not knowing, very, very high emotions. Not that there's still not high emotions. It's
on wonky
cope with
again.
what was happening in amongst my life and with. Okay, am I back there now? The computer's like lagging a bit. Yeah, I can hear everything now. The screen's back. Yeah.
I don't blame her for being so annoyed with Sunny that she basically froze her out for a while. I think it shows determination, and it certainly shows a willingness to do whatever she can for Lily and Jack, that she would turn around and then put all that aside and say, okay, well, I'm going to come out and speak publicly anyway. Now, it could also be partly because Daniel has been bending over backwards to try and make Hayley look bad, so she wants to come out and defend herself, as well as speaking out for Lily and Jack. But you can't blame her. So she's saying about the audio being back in August when emotions were still quite raw and still quite high. And that's in the context of, well, maybe I shouldn't have been so rough on Malehya. Maybe I shouldn't have said these things. But honestly, I'm glad she did. And I think, I would imagine that her thoughts about Malehya probably haven't changed a lot. So yes, maybe because it was only 3 months in, she was less diplomatic. But this is what we need to hear. Of course, the tell here in terms of how much of this really was for Lily and Jack and how much of this was for Hayley, that will be in terms of how much more she engages with Sunny, for example, or other content creators, now that she's broken her silence. She's basically said she doesn't care about backlash anymore. So, can we expect to hear more from Hayley? To hear her as another advocate for Lily and Jack? Or is she just going to fade off into the background again? But she certainly sounds like her heart is in the right place. She's not made one excuse for Malehya. She's certainly not made any excuses for Daniel. And I think she's leaked a few times that she does hold Malehya accountable. Now, as you probably guessed by now, I'm breaking this into 2 parts because I'm only halfway through Hayley's audio and I really want to be able to do this deep dive into what's being said here because there's actually a lot to discuss based on what we've been told. And I know I've really got a lot to say when it comes to the dog situation. So if you've not heard the audio, Hayley, like Belinda, believes that the dog in the CBC interview is not the dog that she saw on the property when they were there to search for the children. I have many thoughts on that, which I will share in the next video. So on that note, thanks for listening. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit that like button that gets this video out there into the algorithm. And please leave a comment below. So thank you, and I will catch you in the next one.